Linda Thompson adjusted her reading glasses and reached for the television remote, settling into her leather armchair with practiced elegance. The evening news droned on about stock markets and political scandals, but her mind wandered to the charity gala she'd attended the previous weekend. The Whitmore Foundation dinner had been a resounding success, and she'd received numerous compliments on her speech about education reform. At 62, Linda had worked hard to maintain her position in Chicago's social elite, especially after losing her husband James 2 years ago. The sound of keys jingling in the foyer interrupted her thoughts. David's voice echoed through the marble entryway of her Lincoln Park mansion. "Mom? Are you home?" "In the living room, dear," she called, not taking her eyes off the screen. It was unusual for David to visit on a Tuesday evening without calling first. As a senior associate at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, he typically worked until at least 9 o'clock. David appeared in the doorway, and Linda immediately noticed something different about him. Her son's usually pristine appearance seemed relaxed. His tie was loosened, his dark hair slightly tousled, and there was an energy about him she hadn't seen in years. "You look well," she observed, finally muting the television. "Did you close the Henderson merger?" "Actually, Mom, I have something important to tell you." David moved to the sofa across from her, his hands fidgeting with his briefcase handle. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." Linda set down the remote entirely, giving him her full attention. In her experience, conversations that began this way rarely brought good news. "I'm married." The words hung in the air like smoke. Linda blinked once, twice, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "Emma and I got married last weekend. We had a small ceremony at—" "Married?" Linda's voice rose an octave. The remote slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. "David, what are you talking about? You haven't even mentioned dating anyone seriously." David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from his childhood when he'd broken something valuable. "I know this is sudden, but Emma and I have been together for 8 months. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure." 8 months? Linda shot to her feet, her elegant composure cracking. "You've been hiding a relationship for 8 months, and now you're telling me you're married to someone I've never met?" "Mom, please sit down, let me explain." But Linda was already pacing, her mind racing. She'd spent 34 years raising David to be the perfect son. Harvard Law, prestigious firm, impeccable social connections. She'd introduced him to dozens of suitable young women from proper families. Catherine Ashford's daughter was a pediatrician. The Morrison girl had just finished her MBA at Wharton. "Who is she?" Linda's voice was dangerously quiet. David shifted uncomfortably. "Her name is Emma Walsh. She's wonderful, Mom. She's kind and intelligent and—" "What does she do?" "She works at a cafe, but that's not—" "A cafe." Linda stopped pacing and fixed her son with a stare that had intimidated board members and socialites alike. "You married a waitress." "She's not just a waitress, she helps manage the place, and she has dreams of—" "Where is she from?" David's silence stretched too long. Linda felt her blood pressure rising. "David. Hines. It's a small town about 2 hours south of here." Linda sank back into her chair as if she'd been physically struck. A waitress from some backwater town. Everything she'd worked for, everything the Thompson name represented, threatened by a gold-digging nobody who'd somehow managed to sink her claws into her naive son. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "Mom, if you'd just meet her—" "Meet her?" Linda's composure finally shattered completely. "David, do you have any idea what you've done? The Thompson family has a reputation in this city. Your father built his business on trust and respectability. I've spent decades cultivating relationships with the right people, supporting the right causes. And you want me to welcome some small-town opportunist who saw a wealthy lawyer and decided to hit the lottery? That's not fair. You don't know Emma." "I don't need to know her." Linda stood again, smoothing down her silk blouse with trembling hands. "I know her type. Pretty enough to turn a man's head, clever enough to make him believe she's different from all the others." Tell me, David, did she get pregnant? Is that why you rushed into this? Jesus, Mom. Number we got married because we love each other. Love, Linda laughed bitterly. You think she loves you? She loves what you can provide, the lifestyle, the status, the money. Mark my words, within a year she'll be pushing for a bigger house, expensive vacations, designer clothes. And when she gets bored of playing house, she'll take half of everything in the divorce. David stood abruptly, his jaw tight with anger. You're being cruel and prejudiced. Emma isn't like that. Every man thinks his fortune hunter is different. She didn't even know what I did for a living when we first met. We talked for hours about books and music and... Oh, please. She researched you the moment she learned your last name. These women are smarter than you think. The hurt in David's eyes made Linda feel a momentary pang of regret, but she pushed it aside. Someone had to protect him from his own foolishness. I thought you'd be happy for me, David said quietly. I thought you wanted me to find someone who made me happy. I want you to find someone worthy of you. Someone from our world who understands what it means to be a Thompson. Like Jennifer Morrison? The one who spent our entire dinner talking about her trust fund. Jennifer Morrison's family has been in Chicago society for 4 generations. She would have been an appropriate choice. She was boring, Mom, and she made it clear she was more interested in the Thompson name than in getting to know me. Linda waved dismissively. Marriage isn't just about personal compatibility, David. It's about building a life together, about family legacies and social responsibility. This Emma person can't possibly understand the pressures and expectations that come with our position. Maybe that's exactly what I need. They stared at each other across the expanse of Oriental rug, 34 years of shared history weighing heavy between them. Linda saw the stubborn set of David's shoulders and recognized her own determination reflected back at her. Where are you living? She asked finally. We're renting a small place downtown while we figure things out. Emma's lease in Hines isn't up until the end of the year, so she's moving here. Eventually, she's still transitioning from her job. Linda nodded slowly, her mind already working. If this Emma was truly a gold digger, she would reveal herself given enough rope. And if she was simply naive about what she'd gotten herself into, well, Linda could help her understand that she was out of her depth. I want to meet her, Linda said. David's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? Of course. If she's going to be part of this family, I need to get to know her. Linda forced a smile she didn't feel. Perhaps we could all have dinner this weekend. That would be great, Mom. I think you'll really like her once you get to know her. I'm sure I will. Linda moved to kiss his cheek, the gesture automatic after years of practice. Now tell me more about this wedding. Where was it held? As David launched into details about the small ceremony at Hines's town hall, Linda's mind was elsewhere. She needed to learn everything she could about Emma Walsh, and she knew exactly who could help her. Claire Whitmore had been Linda's closest friend for over 20 years. They'd served on charity boards together, vacationed in the Hamptons, and weathered the social storms that occasionally buffeted Chicago's elite circles. If anyone would understand Linda's predicament, it would be Claire. They met for lunch at the University Club, settling into their usual corner table overlooking the lake. Claire listened with increasing amazement as Linda recounted David's announcement. Married? Claire nearly choked on her salmon. Without telling you? Can you believe it? 8 months, Claire. 8 months of lies and deception. Well, maybe not lies exactly. Perhaps he was just being cautious. Linda shot her friend a withering look. Whose side are you on? Yours, of course. I'm just saying that David has always been a thoughtful boy. Maybe he wanted to be sure before introducing her to your circle. My circle? Claire, this woman works in a cafe in some nowhere town. She's not going to fit into any circle worth belonging to. Claire sipped her wine thoughtfully. You know, Linda, times have changed. Some of the most interesting people I know came from humble beginnings. Look at Sarah Bennett. Her parents ran a dry cleaner. And now she's one of the most successful interior designers in the city. Sarah Bennett went to Northwestern and built her own business. This Emma person serves coffee. You don't know that's all she does. Linda leaned forward conspiratorially. I had my assistant do some preliminary research. Emma Walsh, 28, high school education, no college degree. She's worked at the same cafe for 3 years. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 22, left her with nothing but debt. Claire's expression softened. Oh, the poor thing, how tragic. Tragic, yes, but also convenient. No family to complicate things, no background to verify her stories. She could be anyone, from anywhere. Linda, you're being paranoid. Am I? She targets a successful, wealthy man with no family support system of her own. She keeps the relationship secret for months while she solidifies her position. Then, suddenly, marriage. It's textbook gold-digging behavior. Claire set down her fork and studied her friend's face. What are you planning to do? I'm going to protect my son. How? Linda hesitated. The idea had been forming in her mind since David's visit, but speaking it aloud would make it real. Remember when your Michael was involved with that inappropriate woman a few years ago? The one who was married? Claire's eyes narrowed. That was different. She was genuinely bad news. But you found a way to end it. I simply facilitated a situation where Michael could see her true nature. Exactly. Linda leaned back, satisfied. If this Emma is what I suspect she is, given the right circumstances, she'll reveal herself. Linda, what exactly are you suggesting? Before Linda could answer, a voice interrupted their conversation. Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Both women looked up to see a stunning brunette in her late 20s standing beside their table. She was tall and elegant, with the kind of bone structure that suggested good breeding, despite her bohemian chic clothing. I'm Sophia Reeves, the young woman continued. I believe you spoke with my mother about me. Linda's mind raced. She hadn't spoken to anyone's mother about anything recently. I'm sorry, I think there's been some confusion. Oh, Sophia laughed, a musical sound. Mrs. Whitmore, not Mrs. Thompson. I apologize. She turned to Claire with a smile. Your friend Patricia mentioned you might have some work for me? Claire's cheeks flushed slightly. Oh, yes. Well, perhaps we could discuss this another time. Of course, I don't want to interrupt your lunch. Sophia glanced between them. But if you need to reach me, you have my number. As the young woman walked away, Linda stared at her friend. Who was that? No one important. Claire. Claire sighed and lowered her voice. She's a consultant. She helps with delicate situations. What kind of situations? The kind where discretion is paramount. The kind where traditional solutions don't work. Linda watched Sophia settle at a table across the room, greeting what appeared to be a wealthy older gentleman with the same charming smile. I want to speak with her. Linda, I don't think that's wise. 5 minutes. What could it hurt? Against her better judgment, Claire waved Sophia over. The young woman approached with obvious curiosity. Mrs. Reeves, I'd like you to meet my dear friend, Linda Thompson. Sophia's eyes lit with recognition. Thompson Industries? I read about your husband's memorial foundation in the Tribune. Such important work. Linda found herself impressed despite her reservations. Thank you. Claire tells me you're a consultant. Among other things, I help people navigate complicated social situations. What kind of complications? Sophia glanced at Claire, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Well, sometimes families face challenges that require creative solutions, relationships that might not be in everyone's best interest, business partnerships that need to be dissolved delicately. I help facilitate outcomes that benefit all parties involved. Linda felt her pulse quicken. I see. And how exactly do you facilitate these outcomes? That depends on the situation. Sometimes it's simply a matter of providing information. Sometimes it requires more active intervention. Active intervention? Sophia smiled enigmatically. I'm very good at helping people see situations more clearly. Often, when presented with the right perspective, they make better choices on their own. Linda exchanged a look with Claire, who was pointedly studying her wine glass. I may have a situation that could benefit from your expertise, Linda said carefully. I'd be happy to discuss it. Perhaps we could meet privately. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Do you know Café Lucerne on Oak Street? I'll be there. Sophia pulled a business card from her purse. I look forward to our conversation, Mrs. Thompson. As Sophia returned to her table, Claire leaned forward urgently. Linda, please be careful. These situations can get out of hand very quickly. I'm just going to talk to her. See what she suggests. Promise me you won't do anything rash. Linda pocketed the business card. I promise I won't do anything that isn't in David's best interest. It wasn't quite the promise Claire had been hoping for, but it was the best she was going to get. Café Lucerne was exactly the kind of place Linda normally avoided. All exposed brick and mismatched furniture, populated by young people with laptops and an abundance of facial piercings. But it was discreet, and anonymity was important for what she had in mind. Sophia was already seated at a corner table when Linda arrived, looking perfectly at home despite the bohemian atmosphere. She'd traded her lunch outfit for designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for meeting me. Sophia stood to shake hands, her grip firm and confident. Can I get you something? The coffee here is actually quite good. Just tea, please. As Sophia placed their order, Linda studied her more carefully. There was something almost chameleon-like about the young woman. She seemed to adapt effortlessly to her surroundings while maintaining an air of sophistication that suggested expensive education and careful cultivation. So, Sophia said once they were settled with their drinks, Claire mentioned you have a delicate family situation. Linda chose her words carefully. My son has recently married someone I believe may not have his best interests at heart. Ah, the classic fortune hunter scenario. I wouldn't put it quite so crudely, but yes. Sophia nodded knowingly. It's more common than you might think, especially among successful men. They want to believe they're loved for themselves, not their bank accounts. It makes them vulnerable to women who are very good at playing the part. Exactly. But how does one prove such a thing without looking like a jealous mother? That's where I come in. Sophia leaned forward conspiratorially. The key is to create a situation where the woman in question reveals her true nature organically. No accusations, no confrontations, just circumstances that allow her real priorities to show. What kind of circumstances? Well, that depends on the woman. Some are motivated purely by money. They'll abandon ship the moment they think the financial well is running dry. Others are more strategic. They want security and status, so they're harder to shake. Then there are the ones who are genuinely manipulative. They enjoy the control and the game itself. Linda felt a chill. Which type do you think Emma is? Tell me about her. Linda recounted everything she knew about Emma Walsh, watching Sophia's expression grow more thoughtful with each detail. Interesting, Sophia murmured when Linda finished. She's either very patient or very smart. Keeping the relationship secret for months suggests long-term planning. The quick marriage could indicate urgency. Maybe she was worried about losing her hold on him. So what do you suggest? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming silently against her coffee cup. The most effective approach is usually to introduce an element of doubt. If she's truly in love with your son, a little competition won't threaten her. But if she's primarily motivated by what he can provide, the possibility of losing her investment will make her desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Competition? Another woman. Someone attractive, available and obviously interested in your son. Nothing overt. We're not trying to actually seduce him. Just enough to make Emma question her security. Linda's pulse quickened. And how would one arrange such competition? Sophia smiled. That's where my particular skills come in handy. I'm very good at being the kind of woman who makes other women nervous. You? I have experience with this type of situation. I know how to be threatening without being obvious, how to plant seeds of doubt without seeming to try. The key is subtlety. Linda stared at the young woman across from her. A week ago, the idea of hiring someone to interfere in David's marriage would have been unthinkable. But now, faced with the possibility of losing her son to someone who might be using him, it seemed not just reasonable but necessary. What would you need from me? Basic information about your son's routines, where he works, where he likes to have lunch, his favourite places in the city, and a few photos so I know what I'm working with. And then I create opportunities for casual encounters. Nothing that can be traced back to you, nothing that seems planned. Just a series of coincidental meetings with an attractive woman who finds him fascinating. What if Emma doesn't care? What if she's secure enough in the relationship to ignore potential threats? Then you'll know she really loves him, and you can adjust your expectations accordingly. Sophia's expression grew serious. But if she is what you suspect she is, she'll reveal herself. Jealousy makes people do stupid things, Mrs. Thompson, and stupid things can be very illuminating. Linda felt a twinge of conscience. David would be furious if he ever discovered what she was planning. But then she thought about Emma Walsh, orphaned, desperate, conveniently available when David was at his most vulnerable after James's death. Sometimes protecting the people you loved required difficult choices. How much? $5,000 for a preliminary assessment. If we decide to proceed with a full intervention, we can discuss additional compensation. It was expensive, but Linda had spent more on a weekend in Paris, and David's future was worth infinitely more than money. When would you start? I'll need a few days to prepare. By early next week, I should be ready to make my first contact. Linda reached for her purse, but Sophia held up a hand. Let's wait until you're certain this is what you want to do. Once we begin, it will be difficult to stop the process without potentially making things worse. I'm certain. Think about it over the weekend. If you still feel the same way on Monday, call me. They parted ways outside the cafe, and Linda walked to her car feeling lighter than she had since David's announcement. She was taking action, protecting her family. It was what any good mother would do. She didn't notice Sophia watching her leave, or the calculating expression that replaced the young woman's helpful smile once Linda was out of sight. Professional consultants like Sophia Reeves stayed in business by giving clients exactly what they wanted to hear. And Linda Thompson clearly wanted to believe her son was in danger. Whether he actually was or not remained to be seen. Linda spent the weekend in a state of anxious anticipation. She'd called Sophia Monday morning before her first cup of coffee was finished, confirming that she wanted to proceed with the plan. By Wednesday, Sophia had already made her first accidental encounter with David at his usual lunch spot downtown. It went perfectly, Sophia reported during their phone call that evening. I spilled coffee on his briefcase. Very authentic, very apologetic. He was completely charming about it, of course. We chatted for about 10 minutes while I helped clean up the mess. What did you talk about? Books, mostly. I mentioned I was reading Cormatt's latest novel, and he lit up. Apparently it's one of his favourites. I made sure to seem impressed by his insights. Nothing flirtatious, just intellectually engaged. Linda felt a familiar stab of pride at her son's intelligence, quickly followed by worry. Did he seem interested? He's a married man who clearly loves his wife, Mrs. Thompson. He mentioned Emma 3 times in 10 minutes, and his face softened every time he said her name. This isn't going to be easy. But you think you can make progress? I think I can make Emma nervous, which is what we want. The next phase involves more sustained contact. Linda hung up, feeling both relieved and troubled. If David was truly as devoted as Sophia suggested, perhaps Emma really did love him. But gold diggers were notoriously good at inspiring devotion. It was part of their skill set. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia engineered several more encounters. She joined David's gym and managed to need help with the weight machines. She began frequenting the coffee shop near his office, always buried in impressive-looking legal journals. She even arranged to be at the same charity fundraiser Linda had mentioned David attending, dressed to kill in a way that suggested old money and impeccable breeding. "She's getting suspicious," Sophia reported after the fundraiser. "Emma was with him that night, and I could feel her watching me every time I spoke to your son." "Did you meet her?" "Briefly. She's not what I expected." Something in Sophia's tone made Linda pause. "What do you mean?" "She's lovely, Mrs. Thompson, genuinely lovely. And the way she looked at your son. I've seen a lot of women pretend to be in love. Emma Walsh isn't pretending." Linda felt her carefully constructed narrative beginning to wobble. "That doesn't mean she's not after his money." "No, it doesn't, but it makes the situation more complicated." "How so?" "Because I think she knows exactly what I'm doing, and she's not taking the bait. A gold digger would be confronting your son by now, demanding explanations, creating drama. Emma just watches and waits." Linda's grip tightened on the phone. "What does that mean?" "It means she's either very secure in her relationship or she's much smarter than we gave her credit for. Either way, we need to escalate." "Escalate how?" "More direct contact, more obvious interest. We need to force her hand." Linda hesitated. The plan had seemed reasonable when it involved casual encounters and subtle maneuvering, but the word escalate suggested something more aggressive, more dangerous. "I want to meet her first," Linda said suddenly. "What?" "Emma. I want to meet her before we do anything else. If she's as lovely as you say, maybe I should give her a chance to prove herself." There was a long pause on Sophia's end. "Mrs. Thompson, that wasn't part of our arrangement." "I'm changing the arrangement. I want to see for myself what we're dealing with." Another pause. "That could complicate things considerably." "Why?" "Because if you meet her and decide you like her, you'll want to call off the plan. But by then, I'll have already planted seeds of doubt in your son's mind about my intentions. The damage may already be done." Linda hadn't considered this possibility. "What kind of seeds?" "Nothing overt. Just questions. About whether he's as happy as he thought. About whether Emma is really the right woman for someone of his caliber. Men are surprisingly susceptible to suggestion when it comes from an attractive woman who seems to understand them." A chill ran down Linda's spine. "Are you saying you've been manipulating David, not just Emma?" "I'm saying I've been doing exactly what you hired me to do, testing the strength of their relationship. Sometimes that requires making both parties question what they have." Linda set down her teacup with a trembling hand. When she'd agreed to this plan, she'd focused entirely on exposing Emma's supposed true nature. She hadn't considered that the process might damage David in the process. "I want to meet Emma this weekend," she said firmly, "and I want you to stop all contact with David until after I do." "Mrs. Thompson." "This is not a request, Miss Reeves. It's a condition of our continued arrangement." Another long pause. "Very well, but I should warn you. If Emma is half as perceptive as I think she is, she may already suspect that our encounters weren't coincidental." "Then I'll deal with that when the time comes." Linda called David Thursday evening to suggest the meeting she'd promised weeks ago. "I was thinking I might drive down to Hines this weekend," she said, trying to sound casual. "If Emma wouldn't mind the intrusion." "Really?" David's surprise was evident. "Mum, that's wonderful. Emma's been hoping to meet you properly. She's been worried that you don't approve of her." Linda's heart clenched with guilt. "Of course I want to meet my daughter-in-law." "Would Saturday work?" "I'll call her right now. She'll be thrilled." After hanging up, Linda sat in her study staring at her husband's photograph. James had always been the diplomat in their marriage, the one who smoothed over her occasionally sharp edges with charm and patience. What would he think of what she'd been doing? "I'm protecting our son," she said aloud to the photograph, "just like you would have done." But James's painted smile offered no absolution for her conscience. Saturday morning dawned grey and drizzly, matching Linda's mood as she drove south toward Hines. She'd never been to the town before, and her preconceptions were shaped by every small-town stereotype she'd ever encountered. She expected poverty, backwardness, and the kind of rural desperation that would produce a young woman willing to marry for money rather than love. The reality of Hines was startlingly different. The town was small, certainly, but it was far from the economically depressed community Linda had imagined. Well-maintained Victorian houses lined tree-shaded streets. The downtown area, while compact, was thriving. Boutique shops, a farmer's market, even what appeared to be a small art gallery. It looked like something from a Norman Rockwell painting, all American charm and quiet prosperity. Emma's house was particularly surprising. Set back from the street behind a white picket fence, it was a beautifully restored craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch and mature gardens that suggested years of careful tending. Linda sat in her Mercedes for a long moment, staring at the house and trying to reconcile it with everything she thought she knew about Emma Walsh. The front door opened before Linda could finish collecting her thoughts, and David emerged with a young woman who could only be Emma. Even from a distance, Linda could see that her preliminary research had failed to capture something essential about her daughter-in-law. Emma moved with a natural grace that couldn't be learned, and when she smiled at something David said, her whole face lit up with genuine warmth. Linda forced herself out of the car and up the flagstone path, her heels clicking against the stones. Emma came down the porch steps to meet her, and Linda was struck by how young she looked, not just in years, but in the unguarded openness of her expression. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so glad you could come." Emma's voice was softer than Linda had expected, with just a trace of a regional accent that was more charming than crude. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for so long." "Please call me Linda." The words came out automatically, though Linda hadn't planned to be so informal so quickly. Emma's smile widened. "I was just telling David how nervous I am. I want so badly to make a good impression." The vulnerability in her voice was disarming. This wasn't the calculating seductress Linda had imagined, but a young woman genuinely anxious to please her new mother-in-law. Linda felt her carefully constructed defences beginning to waver. "There's no need to be nervous, dear. I'm just happy to finally meet the woman who's made my son so happy." As they walked toward the house, Linda found herself noticing details that didn't fit her preconceptions. The gardens were extensive and expertly maintained, requiring both knowledge and considerable investment. The porch furniture was antique wicker, beautifully restored and clearly expensive. Even Emma's casual clothes, a simple sundress and cardigan, were well made and perfectly fitted. The interior of the house was even more surprising. Linda had expected country kitsch or bargain basement furniture, but Emma's home was decorated with sophisticated restraint. Hardwood floors gleamed under Persian rugs that Linda recognized as genuine. The furniture was an eclectic mix of periods and styles that shouldn't have worked together but somehow created a warmth and elegance that Linda's professionally decorated home lacked. "This is beautiful," Linda said, and meant it. "Thank you. It was my grandmother's house originally. I've been slowly restoring it since I inherited it." "Your grandmother?" Another detail that didn't fit the narrative Linda had constructed. "She raised me after my parents died. This place is, well, it's everything to me. All my best memories are here." They settled in the living room, where Emma had prepared what was clearly an elaborate tea service. Not just store-bought cookies and bags of Lipton, but delicate sandwiches, homemade scones, and loose-leaf tea served in china that Linda recognized as spode. "Emma, this is lovely, but you shouldn't have gone to so much trouble." "It's no trouble at all. David told me you appreciate the finer things in life, and I wanted our first meeting to be special." Linda glanced at her son, who was watching Emma with an expression of such tender pride that it made her chest ache. When had she last seen David look at anyone that way? "So, Emma," Linda said, settling back with her teacup, "David tells me you work at a cafe." If Emma noticed the slight emphasis on work, she didn't show it. "I help manage Luna's. It's the coffee shop downtown. Mrs. Patterson, the owner, has been wonderful to me. She's teaching me the business side of things." "Are you interested in restaurant management?" Emma's cheeks flushed slightly. "Actually, I'm hoping to open my own place someday. Nothing fancy, just a small cafe that serves really good food and feels like home. I know it's not very ambitious, but—" "It sounds perfect," Linda interrupted, surprising herself. "Small businesses are the backbone of communities like this." "Exactly!" Emma's face lit up. "That's exactly what I think. There's something special about places where people gather, where they feel comfortable and welcome. I want to create something like that." As the afternoon wore on, Linda found herself genuinely enjoying Emma's company. The young woman was intelligent without being pretentious, curious about Linda's charity work, and genuinely interested in David's career in a way that seemed supportive rather than calculating. When she talked about her plans for the cafe, her eyes shone with the kind of passion that couldn't be faked. More troubling for Linda's peace of mind was the way Emma and David interacted. There was an easy intimacy between them that spoke of genuine partnership. They finished each other's sentences, shared private jokes, and touched each other with the unconscious familiarity of people deeply in love. If Emma was performing, she was the most accomplished actress Linda had ever encountered. As evening approached and Linda prepared to leave, Emma walked her to the car while David gathered her things from the house. "Linda," Emma said quietly, "I want you to know how much David loves you. He talks about you constantly, how proud he is of the work you do, how much he admires your strength since your husband died. I would never want to come between you and your son." Linda studied Emma's face in the gathering dusk. There was no manipulation in her expression, no calculated charm, just honest affection and a desire to reassure. "Thank you for saying that, dear. It means more than you know. I also want you to know that if there's ever anything you need, anything at all, I hope you'll feel comfortable asking. Family takes care of family." The simple words hit Linda like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had offered to take care of her? Since James's death, she'd been the strong one, the one everyone else leaned on. The idea that this young woman, this supposed gold digger, was offering her support was almost overwhelming. "Emma, Linda's voice caught unexpectedly. "Are you all right?" Linda nodded, not trusting herself to speak. David emerged from the house at that moment, saving her from having to respond. "Mum, are you sure you don't want to stay the night? It's getting late for the drive back." "I'll be fine, dear. Thank you both for a lovely day." She hugged David goodbye, then, impulsively, pulled Emma into an embrace as well. The young woman felt small and fragile in her arms, nothing like the predator Linda had imagined. The drive back to Chicago passed in a blur of confusion and guilt. Everything she thought she knew about Emma Walsh had been wrong. The young woman wasn't a gold digger or a manipulator. She was simply someone who loved David and wanted to build a life with him. Someone who had treated Linda with kindness and respect despite having every reason to be defensive. Someone whose marriage Linda had been systematically trying to destroy. Linda called Sophia before she was even through her front door. "We need to talk. Immediately." "Mrs. Thompson, how did the visit go?" "Meet me at my house in an hour. And Sophia, this arrangement is over. Whatever you've been doing, whatever seeds you've planted, I want it stopped." "I'm afraid it's not that simple." "1 hour." Linda hung up and poured herself a large glass of wine, her hands shaking. How had she allowed herself to be so blinded by prejudice and fear? Emma was everything she should have wanted in a daughter-in-law, kind, intelligent, genuinely devoted to David, and Linda had tried to destroy her out of nothing more than snobbery and paranoia. Sophia arrived precisely on time, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mrs. Thompson, before you say anything, I think you should know that there have been some developments." "I don't care about developments. I care about undoing whatever damage we may have caused to two innocent people." "That's what I'm trying to tell you. We may not be able to undo anything." Linda felt her blood turn to ice. "What do you mean?" Sophia sat down uninvited, her usual poise cracking. "Your son called me this afternoon." "He what?" "He asked to meet with me, tomorrow for coffee. He said he wanted to discuss something important." Linda stared at her in horror. "You think he knows?" "I think Emma told him about our encounters. All of them. And I think she's been watching me more carefully than either of us realized. But why would he want to meet with you if he knows what you've been doing?" Sophia's laugh was bitter. "Because she's smarter than both of us, Mrs. Thompson. She's turning this whole situation to her advantage." "I don't understand. Think about it. If Emma really suspected that our meetings weren't coincidental, what would be the smartest thing for her to do? Confront you directly, create drama. Number she'd let it play out, gather evidence, and then present your son with proof of exactly what kind of person his mother really is." Linda sank into her chair as the full implications hit her. "She's been playing us." "From the very beginning, I suspect. Which means she's not the naive, small-town girl you thought she was. She's something much more dangerous, someone who's several steps ahead of everyone else in the room." Linda thought back to the afternoon, to Emma's kindness and apparent vulnerability. Had it all been an act? Had she been manipulated as expertly as she thought she was manipulating others? "What does David want to discuss with you?" "I imagine he wants me to confess to being hired by his mother to test his wife's loyalty, and then he'll have all the ammunition he needs to cut you out of his life permanently." The words hit Linda like physical blows. In trying to protect David from a woman she'd thought was using him, she'd positioned herself as the villain in their story. And tomorrow, she would lose her son forever. "Can you refuse to meet with him?" "I could. But that might make things worse. At least if I meet with him, I can try to control the narrative." "How?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her calculating expression returning. "I could tell him that I approached you, not the other way around. That I convinced you Emma was after his money based on my own observations. It would minimize your culpability. But that would be a lie. Mrs. Thompson, at this point, the truth is going to destroy your relationship with your son. A lie might save it." Linda stared out the window at her perfectly manicured garden, remembering the warmth in Emma's voice when she'd offered to take care of her. Had that been genuine, or just another move in a game Linda was too naive to understand? Either way, she'd lost. If Emma was innocent, Linda had betrayed her trust and her son's happiness. If Emma was manipulating them all, Linda had walked straight into her trap. "Do what you think is best," Linda said finally. "I just want to minimize the damage to David." After Sophia left, Linda sat alone in her study, staring at James's photograph and wondering how everything had gone so terribly wrong. Tomorrow, her son would learn exactly what kind of person his mother was. And no matter how the conversation went, Linda suspected their relationship would never recover. The perfect match, it seemed, was going to cost her everything. Linda didn't sleep that night. She paced her bedroom until dawn, rehearsing conversations that would never happen and preparing for consequences she couldn't avoid. By 7 a.m., she was dressed and sitting in her kitchen with untouched coffee, staring at her phone and willing it not to ring. It rang at 8:30. "Mom." David's voice was carefully controlled, which somehow made it more frightening than if he'd been shouting. "We need to talk." "Of course, dear. Would you like to come over for—" "Not over the phone, and not at your house. Meet me at Grant Park by the Buckingham Fountain. 1 hour." The line went dead before Linda could respond. Grant Park on a Sunday morning was peaceful, filled with joggers and families with strollers. Linda found David sitting on a bench facing the fountain, still dressed in the clothes he'd worn the day before. He looked like he hadn't slept either. David. She approached cautiously as if he were a wounded animal that might bolt. He didn't look at her. Sit down, Mom. Linda perched on the edge of the bench, maintaining distance between them. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the water cascade in the fountain's endless cycle. I met with Sophia Reeves yesterday, David said finally. Linda's heart hammered against her ribs. Oh? Interesting woman. Very beautiful, very charming. Also very expensive, according to her invoice. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Linda recognized her own signature on a check made out to S. Reeves Consulting for $5,000. She was quite forthcoming about your arrangement once I showed her this. Apparently, Emma found it in your purse yesterday when she was looking for aspirin for your headache. Linda remembered Emma's gentle concern when she'd mentioned her head bothering her, how the young woman had insisted on finding something to help. The memory felt like a knife twisting in her chest. David, I can explain. Can you? He finally turned to look at her, and Linda was shocked by the pain in his eyes. Can you explain why you hired someone to seduce your own son? Can you explain why you've spent the last month trying to destroy my marriage? I was trying to protect you. From what? From happiness? From love? Linda's carefully prepared explanations crumbled in the face of his raw hurt. From someone who might be using you. Using me? David laughed bitterly. Do you know what Emma said when she found that check? She said, your mother must love you very much to go to such lengths to protect you. Even after discovering that you've been plotting against her for weeks, her first instinct was to defend you. The words hit Linda like physical blows. David, do you know what else she said? She said she understood why you were suspicious. A woman from nowhere with no family, no obvious means of support, suddenly married to a wealthy lawyer. She said if she were in your position, she might have done the same thing. Linda felt tears pricking at her eyes. She said that. She's been worried about you, Mom. Worried that you were lonely. That you felt like I was abandoning you. She's been trying to figure out how to make you feel more included in our lives, and this whole time you've been treating her like the enemy. The fountain's spray caught the morning light, creating tiny rainbows in the mist. Linda watched them form and dissolve, thinking of the way Emma had embraced her the day before, the genuine warmth in her voice when she'd offered to help with anything Linda needed. I thought she was after your money, Linda whispered. What money, Mom? I'm a junior associate at a law firm. I make a decent salary, but I'm not wealthy. Not like you thought, anyway. But the Thompson name, the family connections, mean nothing to someone who doesn't care about status and social climbing. David turned to face her fully. Emma doesn't want your world, Mom. She wants her own world with me in it. There's a difference. Linda thought about Emma's house, her dreams of opening a cafe, the way she'd talked about creating a place where people felt welcome and comfortable. None of it had been about wealth or status. It had all been about building something meaningful, something lasting. I've made a terrible mistake, Linda said. Yes, you have. They sat in silence again, the weight of Linda's actions settling between them like a stone. Is she going to leave you because of this? Linda asked finally. David was quiet for so long that Linda thought he wasn't going to answer. She wants to, he said eventually. Not because she's angry at you, but because she thinks her presence in my life is causing me to lose my family. She loves me enough to walk away if she thinks it's better for me. Linda felt something break inside her chest. And what did you tell her? I told her that if she left, I'd follow her. That my family isn't worth having if it can't accept the person who makes me happy. The simple statement carried the weight of an ultimatum, though David's voice held no threat, only sadness. What do you want me to do? Linda asked. I want you to fix this. I want you to find a way to earn Emma's forgiveness. And then I want you to figure out how to be the mother I used to be proud of instead of someone I don't recognize. He stood to leave, then paused. She's not going anywhere, Mom. Emma and I are building a life together, with or without your blessing. The only question is whether you want to be part of that life or not. After he left, Linda sat by the fountain for another hour, watching families walk by and thinking about the choices that had brought her to this moment. She'd been so afraid of losing David that she'd nearly guaranteed it through her own actions. It was time to stop being afraid and start being the person Emma apparently still believed she could be. Linda drove to Hines that same afternoon, arriving unannounced at Emma's door just as the sun was beginning to set. Emma opened the door in old jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked younger than her 28 years, and vulnerable in a way that made Linda's chest ache with guilt. Linda. Emma's smile was cautious but not unfriendly. I wasn't expecting you. I know, I should have called, but I was afraid you might tell me not to come. Emma stepped aside to let her in. David's not here. He had to go back to the city for work tomorrow. Actually, I came to see you. Just you. They settled in Emma's living room, where the remains of what looked like a painting project were scattered across the coffee table. Emma noticed Linda looking at the supplies. I'm touching up the trim in the guest bedroom. I like to keep busy when I'm thinking. What are you thinking about? Emma was quiet for a moment, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Whether I'm good for David or not. The simple honesty of the statement made Linda's throat tighten. What conclusion are you reaching? I don't know. I love him more than I've ever loved anyone. But love isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes love means letting go. Linda thought of her own marriage to James, how they'd supported each other through good times and bad, how they'd grown stronger together rather than apart. Sometimes, Linda said carefully, love means fighting for what you have instead of walking away. Emma looked up at her with surprise. I thought you wanted me to walk away. I thought I did too. I was wrong about a lot of things. Linda took a deep breath, knowing that what she said next would determine not just her relationship with Emma, but her relationship with her son. Emma, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Emma nodded, her expression wary but attentive. I hired Sophia Reeves to test your loyalty to David. I thought you were a gold digger, someone who was using my son for financial security and social status. I was so convinced that I was right that I was willing to potentially destroy your marriage to prove it. Emma's face went very still, but she didn't interrupt. I was wrong about everything. You're not after David's money or his family connections. You love him genuinely, and you make him happier than I've seen him in years. More than that, you're a good person, kind and generous and forgiving in ways I don't deserve. Linda's voice began to shake, but she pressed on. I was so afraid of losing my son that I nearly guaranteed it through my own actions. I was so focused on protecting him from someone I thought was using him that I became the person who was actually hurting him. She stopped, her throat too tight to continue. Emma sat quietly, her expression unreadable. Why are you telling me this? Emma asked finally. Because you deserve the truth. And because I'm hoping you might be willing to give me a chance to prove that I'm better than my worst impulses. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at her garden where the last light was fading from the sky. I knew, she said finally. You knew? About Sophia. About the plan. I figured it out after the second accidental encounter. Emma's voice was calm, matter of fact. She was good, but not perfect. Too many coincidences, too much interest in someone who was clearly unavailable. Linda stared at her in shock. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Because I understood why you did it. Emma turned to face her, and Linda was surprised to see compassion rather than anger in her eyes. You lost your husband 2 years ago. Your son is the most important thing in your life. And suddenly he's married to someone you know nothing about. Of course you were suspicious. Of course you wanted to protect him. But I was wrong. You were scared, Emma corrected gently. There's a difference. Linda felt tears starting to fall and didn't try to stop them. How can you be so kind to me after what I did? Because I know what it's like to be afraid of losing someone you love. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, and when she was diagnosed with cancer, I became obsessive about protecting her, controlling her environment, trying to manage every aspect of her care. I nearly drove her crazy with my hovering. Emma smiled at the memory, though her eyes were sad. She finally sat me down and told me that love without trust isn't really love at all. It's just fear wearing a prettier name. She said that if I really loved her, I had to trust her to make her own choices, even if they weren't the choices I would make. Linda thought about her own attempts to control David's life, to manage his choices according to her own fears and prejudices. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. She also said that everyone deserves the chance to prove they're better than their worst moment, as long as they're genuinely trying to be better. The words hung in the air between them, an offer and a challenge rolled into one. What would it take, Linda asked, for you to believe I'm genuinely trying to be better? Emma considered the question seriously. Time, I think, and honesty, and maybe inclusion. Inclusion? I'd like to know more about David's childhood, about your family traditions, about the things that shaped him into the man I fell in love with. And I'd like you to know more about me, not the version you imagined, but the real me. Linda nodded, hope beginning to bloom in her chest. I'd like that too. They talked until nearly midnight, sharing stories and memories that began to bridge the gap Linda's suspicions had created. Emma told her about growing up with her grandmother, about learning to cook and garden and find joy in simple things. Linda found herself talking about David as a child, about James's death, about the loneliness she'd been carrying without realizing it. When Linda finally prepared to leave, Emma walked her to the car. Linda, Emma said as she opened the driver's door, I need you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. David and I are going to build a life together, and I hope you'll be part of it. But if you ever try to manipulate or test our relationship again, I will walk away, not to punish you, but to protect what David and I have built. The quiet strength in Emma's voice reminded Linda that this young woman was much more formidable than her gentle demeanor suggested. I understand, Linda said, and I promise you won't have to. As she drove home through the darkness, Linda felt something she hadn't experienced since James's death, the possibility of genuine connection with another person. Emma wasn't the daughter-in-law she'd imagined wanting, but she might be exactly the daughter-in-law she needed. 3 months later, Linda stood in the kitchen of Emma's cafe, sleeves rolled up and an apron tied around her waist, helping prepare for the soft opening. Emma had found a perfect location in downtown Hines, a converted Victorian house with enough character to feel welcoming and enough space to accommodate both the cafe and a small gift shop featuring local artisans. Are you sure about the lavender scones? Emma asked, pulling a tray from the oven. They're a little unconventional. Trust me, Linda said, arranging pastries in the display case. Sometimes people don't know they want something until you show them it exists. It had become their weekly routine, Linda driving down to Hines every Saturday to help with the cafe preparations. What had started as an attempt at reconciliation had evolved into genuine partnership. Linda's business experience and social connections, combined with Emma's vision and genuine warmth, were proving to be a formidable combination. Mrs. Thompson, a cheerful voice called from the dining room, the new tables look perfect. Linda smiled. The voice belonged to Sarah Bennett, who had indeed proven to be as talented as Claire had suggested. Emma had hired her to help with the interior design, and the result was exactly what Emma had envisioned. A space that felt like home while maintaining professional polish. David appeared in the kitchen doorway looking relaxed in a way Linda hadn't seen since before James's death. How are my favourite women doing? Your wife is a perfectionist, Linda said, but her tone was fond rather than critical. She's rearranged the display case 3 times this morning. Because presentation matters, Emma protested, though she was smiling. This is our first impression on the community. The community already loves you, David assured her, dropping a kiss on the top of her head. Half the town has been stopping by all week to see how things are coming along. Linda watched the easy affection between them and felt the last of her reservations dissolve. Whatever she'd thought she knew about appropriate matches and social compatibility, David and Emma had something rare and genuine. They brought out the best in each other, and their love had been strong enough to survive Linda's attempts to destroy it. "Linda," Emma said, "would you mind handling the register for the first hour? I want to make sure the kitchen is running smoothly, and you're much better with people than I am." Linda was surprised by how much the compliment meant to her. "You're wonderful with people, dear. But I'd be happy to help." The soft opening was a resounding success. The cafe filled with locals eager to try Emma's cooking and see the transformation of the old Victorian house. Linda found herself genuinely enjoying the interactions with customers, the easy rhythm of taking orders and making recommendations. "You're a natural at this," said Mrs. Patterson, Emma's former boss, as Linda rang up her order. "Ever think about changing careers?" Linda laughed. "I think I'll stick to being a part-time volunteer, but thank you." As the afternoon wound down and the last customers filtered out, Linda helped Emma and David clean up and close the cafe. They worked together efficiently, the 3 of them having developed an easy camaraderie over the months of preparation. "I have an announcement," David said as they finished wiping down tables. Linda and Emma both looked at him expectantly. "I've been offered a position with a firm in Springfield. It's a partnership track, and it would mean we could live here full-time." Emma's face lit up with joy, but she quickly glanced at Linda. "What about your mother? We can't just leave her alone in Chicago." Linda felt her heart swell with affection for this young woman who had every reason to want distance from her, but instead was concerned about her well-being. "Actually," Linda said, "I've been thinking about that. This house is lovely, but it's much too big for one person, and Hines seems like the kind of place where someone could make a real difference in the community." David and Emma stared at her in surprise. "Are you saying you want to move here too?" David asked. "I'm saying I want to be where my family is, and I think this town could use someone with experience in fundraising and event planning. Emma's already mentioned wanting to host community events here at the cafe." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Linda, are you sure? You have so many connections in Chicago, so many commitments." "I have some connections that matter to me, and they'll still be there when I want to visit, but my most important commitment is to being the mother and mother-in-law you both deserve." David crossed the room and pulled Linda into a fierce hug. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart. Both of you." Emma joined their embrace, and Linda felt something click into place. Not the family she'd planned, but the family she'd been given. It was messier than she'd expected, more complicated, but also richer and more rewarding than anything she could have controlled or manipulated into existence. 6 months later, Linda stood in the same cafe, now thriving and established as the heart of Hines's social scene, watching Emma and David cut their wedding cake. They'd decided to have a proper ceremony to celebrate their first anniversary, surrounded by the community that had embraced them both. Linda had walked Emma down the aisle, an honour she'd never expected but treasured beyond measure. Claire had come down from Chicago with several other friends, all of whom were charmed by Emma and the life she and David had built together. "No regrets?" Claire asked, joining Linda at the edge of the celebration. Linda watched David spin Emma around the dance floor, both of them laughing with pure joy. She thought about the year behind them, the mistakes, the reconciliation, the gradual building of trust and affection. She thought about the life ahead of them, the grandchildren she hoped to spoil, the family traditions they would create together. "None at all," Linda said, and meant it completely. Emma caught her eye from across the room and smiled, the expression warm and welcoming and full of love. Linda smiled back, grateful beyond measure that sometimes the perfect match wasn't what you expected, but exactly what you needed. The greatest love stories she'd learned weren't about finding someone perfect, but about choosing to love imperfect people perfectly. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they chose to love you back the same way.